Let's round out the show, round out the week. It's been a doozy.
Yes.
I'm just going to say it. And it's because of so much of what's going on in the world, so much colliding. Who better to help us make sense of it all than Marian Salzman, Senior Vice President of Global Communications for Philip Morris International. She's a trend expert. We love catching up with her because she's able to distill so much of what's going on around us into some really nice insight. She joins us on the phone from Switzerland. We appreciate her taking part of her Friday evening with us. Marian, really nice to talk with you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so we talked with you back in March, and, the world was starting to change, but, man, these 6 months have just been, they've turned us upside down in so many ways. As you try and, one of the things we try and do, we talk to so many people about is sort of separating the signal from the noise. What are the signals that you're finding in all of these crises that seem to be colliding on us?
Let's start with the crisis of the fires that have led to 10% of Oregon being evacuated as of this afternoon. Let's talk about the COVID dissonance, the fact that I think that on one level, COVID is killing over 100,000 Americans so far, hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And yet I think we're on COVID overload, so we're starting to tune out and sort of turn off to this dreaded disease. I think the economic implications have really shattered people's confidence of themselves and their own ability to see a future. At the core, let's talk about the hate we see on the streets, especially in the U.S., but globally, sort of the pushback against systemic inequalities. I think it's a time for which, as a trend spotter, I'm completely unprepared. There's so many data points coming at me, so much bad news, and this inability to find any kind of safe space. I think we're all craving a safe space. We kind of want to wake up tomorrow morning and think it's been a nightmare and it's over. The reality is it isn't. It's just beginning.
So how does this, listen, okay, so yeah, these are topics that Jason and I have been, talking about really nonstop over the last few months, and of course since March, about how this is shaping and impacting our world. And I think companies are, sitting up and taking notice. I do wonder about politically what this means. How does this change policy? How does this change our world? How do you see that playing out?
I think that there's a bifurcation. On one level, I think the hope in me wishes for more collaboration, for people to come together, to put their differences aside and look for constructive solutions that help the greatest number of people. On the other hand, I see the them and us being more prevalent than ever that I can remember in our history. And so I see people becoming very party-centric, very polarized. I think the right has moved further right, the left has moved further left. And I think that it's very, very hard to find those moments where people can come together and behave in a civilized fashion. So I think this lack of civility means that even getting policy done, getting policy changed, has become harder than ever before, because if you said it, then I hate it. If I said it, you hate it. It doesn't matter if we could have come to consensus.
And so what do we do as individuals? Like, what's one thing that we can think about going into this weekend? We get to catch our breath, hopefully a little bit. Like, what's one small thing that we can do just as humans, Marian?
Every possible moment in every appropriate situation, say thank you. So whether it's the big thank you to first responders, it's the big thank you to those who have been staffing places, it's thank you to those small business people who are trying to keep their businesses alive, or it's simply thanking your next door neighbor for lending you a cup of sugar. I think it's conveying a sense of humanity and gratitude.
Yeah, but it's interesting, that you say that, and I just think of the images that we've seen of people on different sides of an argument, and it's a lot of anger. It's guns. It's, it's pretty tragic and very divisive.
No, it's awful. I think what's awful is I feel like my generation grew up in the 70s, and we sort of had this sportsman-like point of view that you could say to people, I agree to disagree. I feel like that single statement needs to be reintroduced into everything everyone does, from the most senior people in the nation to the most everyday person who needs to get along with their neighbors. I agree to disagree doesn't mean you're going to compromise your views or your values. It means I'm going to give the other person's space to flourish. And I don't know how we restore that. It's this lack of civility that permeates everything that needs to get done right now.
So when you think about, Marian, just as we wrap up here, sort of kind of what's changed maybe for the good in us through this pandemic. I mean, I do think many of us have rediscovered our families in some ways. We've rediscovered sort of, hopefully, how important it is to take care of our bodies and take care of our minds, just by being sort of shocked into that and being, in one place a little bit. Is there anything that we can sort of hang on to from that as we move forward into whatever is next?
Yeah, I think we're reinventing the education system, and we're recognizing the importance of being educated and literate. And while I think parents are struggling getting their kids schooled right now, I think the importance of education is really being reinforced across every level of society. I do think that's a bigger thing that has some positive outcomes.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. Marian Salzman, Senior Vice President of Global Communications, a trend expert at Philip Morris International. She's got a long history of working with brands and sort of understanding what makes us tick, Carol, and it is tricky right now.